So I'm used to it, but you literally have to eat it.
Okay, like that.
Yeah. So
Okay.
your chair's on wheels, so you can move it forward.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm very used to it. But the mics are fantastic. But if you're here, it sounds like you're a million miles away.
Okay, right. Okay, yeah.
So you can get yourself right to there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for coming down, up, left, right. I'm not sure. But I'm excited. You've been in this game for a long time.
Yeah, 30 years. I started in mental health, and then the last 20 years in occupational health, so working with businesses directly through occupational health departments and things like this. Mainly male-orientated businesses as well, so large manufacturing, emergency services. So a lot of experience of working with the guys, really.
Yeah. Did you want to work with the guys, or was it just the industries that you found yourself in?
Just the industries, really. Just the industries. And I guess I came from very much what we call a tertiary service, working in the NHS, where people are often referred in and they're quite poorly by the time they get through to the service.
Okay.
And then I went out to work more in public health, which is more about preventative. People who are on that journey of illness, but we're trying to get in there early.
Yeah.
And so I had to make almost a bit of a cognitive shift myself from working with illness to working with wellness. So people who are sort of knocking on the door of illness, but trying to get them back. And that's where it became really fascinating. That's where you start to see there's so many angles to it all.
It's complex.
Yes,
I know in
complex.
your notes you were talking about the importance of early intervention.
Yeah.
Noticing things, which I think traditionally we're not very good at, just because we've become so busy and fixated on success and drive and ambition that we forget to, in my case, you forget to slow down and ask questions of yourself and have a look. So I've been having psychotherapy for about 3 years now.
Okay.
I've tried various forms of therapy, from counselling, CBT.
Yeah.
And they've all had their benefits, that's for sure. I think I've noticed a shift over the last few years in particular. And again, it's hard to know whether that's the psychotherapy, because often you do so many things that it's hard to pinpoint, well, what's working for me, what out of the 8 things that I'm doing that are good in my life, what's playing the biggest roles. But I still don't quite know what psychotherapy is.
Right.
I don't know, I don't know the job of a psychotherapist and what actually happens during that process, because I get to the end of the session sometimes, Alan, and I'm like, well, what was the purpose of that session? It feels good, but there's no direction given by a psychotherapist, which I find fascinating and genius, by the way. Because it's easy to get mentored in life where people tell you what to do. Yeah. So what is the role of a psychotherapist, and what is psychotherapy?
Yeah, that's $1 million question. I guess it's interesting. I'm just thinking off cuff here. Right. So within psychotherapy, you've got lots of modalities, lots of schools. Different approaches, and I guess different approaches suit different core conditions that people are struggling with, but also different personalities of the individual. So I'm training cognitive behaviour therapy. I do think it's over marketed. I think it's not the panacea and the be all for everything at all. But I guess it became quite a measurable modality to be able to use. So research was able to grab hold of a cognitive behavioural process and measure it and say, well, out of 10 people, 8 people improved. And that's what we need in a economic environment. Who's going to pay for these services if nobody can prove they work? So CBT then became the be all and end all, but it wasn't really right, because the other modalities are just as effective but are very difficult to measure, like psychoanalysis, psychodynamic approaches. You can't measure you've just said something really interesting there, that you said you don't know why it works and how it works, and scientists in my work have been studying that for many, many years. We know one of the greatest vehicles to recovery is a therapeutic relationship. We know that without that, all the modalities are sort of relatively limited. So you've got a good relationship with whoever you're working with. So that collaboration, that's sort of key to it. But I'm interested in the neuroscience of psychotherapy, because what it basically says is the brain can't introspect, so you can't think about what you're thinking on your own. So we sit there and reflect sometimes, but the very act of looking at a thought changes a thought. So without doing it with somebody in the room with you, or somebody to guide you, or somebody to have some kind of framework, it's really difficult. So psychotherapy for me is that introspection, to enable the brain to think about the brain. And I read it's a great article by a neuroscientist, and that's what he was saying. He was saying it's called the book's called The Idiot Brain, and he's a neuroscientist, and he decided to write a book. And he was saying that the brain is a real coarse, not accurate machine. We think it's accurate, but it's not that accurate. It's very rough. So when we're introspecting, we tend to find what we're looking for. And then we'll go, oh, I've got that. I know why I'm like this, because when I was 15, this happened. But we're just finding what we're looking for. And whereas psychotherapy will challenge you at that level and say, well, what else did you find? And so it's very challenging.
That makes total sense.
Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. From someone who's in that experience, yeah. And when we talk about reflection, sometimes I often ask, like, who's doing the reflecting? So I know that I can reflect, but depending on how I feel that day and what I've experienced, like my reflection's totally different.
Yeah.
So it becomes like knowledge is crucial, but so is self-study. Like you say, like, well, who's doing the thinking?
Yeah.
Who's doing the reflecting?
Yeah.
And a good psychotherapist, in my opinion, can help me with that.
Absolutely,
so they take me out of my own standard, stuck ways of viewing things.
Yeah. And I think mood, you just said there again, mood's really important here. So mood is biological, emotions are biological. Emotion means to move forward. So when you've got a different emotion, you'll have a different cognition. We've been brought up in the Western world to believe that thoughts drive the ship. I think, therefore I feel, therefore I do. Cognitive emotion, behaviour type of thing. But actually the body keeps the score as well, so it's a two-way road. You know, the thoughts drive the emotion, but the emotion drives the thoughts. I guess in cognitive behaviour we're not that interested in which one drives the ship. We're interested in which one's maintaining the problem. Is it the person's behaviour? Is it the emotions? Are they very depressed on a biological level? Or is it their thoughts? Have they got a lot of negative thoughts? But we're not interested in which one drives the ship. We're interested in how we can break that vicious circle. But we've brought up in the Western world to believe very much that the thoughts drive the ship. But as we know, if I wake up tomorrow morning and I haven't slept very well, I'll open the curtains and I'll think, oh, you know, I've got to drive through all that traffic and another long day at work, oh gosh, you know. But if I wake up the next day and I've had a good night's sleep, I'll open the curtains and think, oh, good day at work ahead of me. So the world hasn't changed, but my sleep has. So the body often keeps a score, and it tells the brain what to think.
But by definition, I think we think that the world's changed.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. And that's where
how it feels.
Yeah, and that's where depression lives.
Right, okay.
Because obviously when you're in depression, you see the world from a very morbid, nihilistic sort of perspective.
Yeah, do you think, because I was thinking about this, I was doing some study yesterday on Gurdjieff's work, or Spensky, his student. Jeff put me in kind of like direction of this book, and Tony's mentioned Gurdjieff before, and he spoke about the difficulty for people to know the difference between thoughts, feelings, emotions, senses. And I thought, well, that's really obvious. And I sat back and thought, oh, actually, Alex, do you really know what drives you and what the difference is between a thought and a feeling? And I was like, actually, I'm not sure I do, really. Like, theoretically, perhaps. Yeah. But I've thought that there's things in my life where a thought has crept into my head and then I'm acting like a completely different animal just from a thought. So it's a whole spiral, a cascade of different things that are going on. And it's like, well, how do I start to step back and observe this? Because like you say, if the brain can't do that, then how can we do that? Yeah,
and I guess that reflexivity, that introspection, and whether we call it psychotherapy, it's just interesting having this discussion, whether we have a good friend that we can bounce off, or we become more psychologically intellectual, and we have done, there's no doubt about it. God bless them, but my parents' generation didn't do a lot for mental health, and that's not their fault. My generation, we didn't do that much for mental health, but the next generation, it started to shift massively. And my daughter's generation, she's 28, they're shifting mental health on that.
In what way?
Just understanding the complexity of it, destigmatizing it, I guess, and bringing it out into the open. And then I'd like to think my grandson, who's 8, his generation will smash it and will keep. So it takes generations to move into the intellectual side of mental health. Like you said, what is a thought? What is an emotion? I think it was, Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. So we followed that route for a lot. So I'm thinking, we're in control of our thoughts. I think, therefore I am. And it was sort of Nietzsche who said, is there such thing as free will? And he challenged it, because are we really in control of our thoughts? You know, I've just had a thought now, but did I bring that on, or was it pushed through?
What's making you so optimistic that we're smashing it and that the stigma's being removed? Because do you have a look at data and ever become concerned that we're not smashing it, that we're not making progress?
Yeah, I look at the suicide data, which hasn't shifted at all. That's not great. But then suicide data has been like this for the last 50 years, and there's a lot of trait factors that link in with suicide, a lot of personality trait factors, which are quite static throughout history of time, our personalities. So that plays a role there. But I guess some of it is my age. So I joined the mental health services in 1986, and it was pretty shit. You know, I look back now and I'm quite embarrassed about even how I practice, because you think you're good, and then 10 years later you think that wasn't good. And I'm sure 10 years from now I'll be looking back thinking that really wasn't good, Al. So I guess from my own experience, I've seen a massive positive shift over the last 30 years. I know people who are just coming into it are very frustrated, and I'm trying to sort of sometimes explain to them and say, come back to the 1980s with me and you'll realise just how far we've come.
So is this the industry that you're talking of, or the individuals that require the help? So are you saying that men have improved, or the actual industry in the...
Yeah, that's an interesting question, actually. I think the industry, yeah, I think it has become an industry, and like anything in life, there's good and bad with that.
Right.
The individual definitely has improved. So I work at West Midlands Fire Service, and they won't mind me saying, so I've been there 20 years. So 20 years ago, you wouldn't really get many firefighters coming to see me in occupational health. They'll probably be sent there by the manager or HR, or they're really struggling, and it's obvious.
Yeah.
And now these guys will come in, they'll phone, they'll say, can I have an appointment with that? Can I go and see Alan? I've seen him in the past. I'm not feeling great. I'm wobbling a little bit. So they're lots more likely for them to come for help. Perhaps
because you're good, supportive?
Yeah, I think the service is good, and it's what they've done really well. All of us is we've got out there and said to the organisation, no more machoism. That they've realised that that the alpha male isn't what the alpha male used to be. They're realising that. They're realising that rigidity is not good. The ability to have flexibility is paramount, really. If you look at post-trauma research, more people who are rigid tend to be more likely to develop post-traumatic stress disorder. People who are flexible tend to be able to deal with those events a lot better.
Is that down to the projections that we make then? So in that rigid lifestyle, we have a certain thought pattern where things must be like A, B, and C, and if they're not, we struggle to cope.
Yeah.
Is that where in essence it lives?
Yeah,
it's interesting because there's a paradox in everything. So I see the benefit of being fairly structured and rigid and disciplined, and this is what time I'm getting up, and this is what I'm doing, and it's focused. But I also see the opposite to that, of there being benefits in being flexible.
Yeah.
I don't know where the answer lies, perhaps somewhere in between.
Yeah, that's Alex, that's a really good point, and something that frustrates me, I've got to be honest, with the well-being agenda. So if we look at well-being the way that we looked at diet industry in the 1980s, we're going to mess it up completely.
Sure.
In fact, more people put weight on when the diet industry took off in the 80s than it ever did. And I think we could have a paradox with well-being as well, by telling people that if you do this, this, this and this, you're going to be well. It's not only a lie, it's going to perpetuate human distress.
Yeah.
So I think that's what worries me a little bit, and depression is a great example of that. So I see it on LinkedIn. People, we can wipe out depression, we can cure depression. You want to prevent depression. Depression is actually good for us. It's the level of depression that's not good for us. So mild depression, what psychologists would say is mild depression is when the body puts us in a state of ultimate problem solving. So, I haven't told you this, I put you on the spot here, buds, but my dad passed away last month, 21st September. I lost my mum in 2016, didn't deal with that very well at all, but my dad's been poorly for some time, so it's more of a relief. So, but I'm probably in that mild depression now.
Okay.
And people would go, so the wellbeing agenda would say, get Alan out of that mild depression, it's not good, let's go and cheer him up, let's take him out, let's do things. That's the natural urge, is to help. I need to stay in this position for a bit because it's ultimate problem solving. So in order to say goodbye to something, the body shuts down a bit, removes the emotion, so you become a little bit flat, and then you're able to process the loss. If I do anything to stop that process, I'm going to stop the processing of the loss. So with my mother, I drank probably too much and I buried my head in work. So 2 years later, it come back to bite me big time. This time, I'm enjoying it. A little bit of sadness, a little bit of just reflecting time. And so even being in the job for 30 years, you don't really know it when you're in it. You can read all the books in the world, but when you're in it, you can't see the wood for the trees. So I think what we have to understand is there's a level of depression that's good for us. There's a great TED talk, if you're ever interested, by a guy called Solomon. And he's a journalist, and it's about 10 minutes long.
Yeah, let me just write that name
down,
because I always say I'll remember, and I'll get home and you'll get a text going, what was that guy's?
Yeah, no, and the listeners, it's a guy called Solomon. So if you just put in Solomon depression, you'll get his TED talk. I think it's about 10 minutes. And what he says is, it's probably the best depression TED talk I've ever seen. And what he says is, at the start of his depression, it was beautiful. He enjoyed it. He got rid of all his friends. He didn't go out. He sat there and it was in a real warm, comfortable place. So he was saying goodbye to something. But what happened was he stayed there too long. So what starts as a mild depression enabled you to sort of problem solve, say goodbye to something. If you stay there for too long, it then becomes moderate, mild to moderate, and then moderate to severe. So he, in the 10-minute talk, he actually, right at the end of the talk, he says, and I woke up standing on a bridge and I was about to jump. So what starts off as quite a nice journey, you go deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole, because you stop seeing your friends, you might start drinking, or you stop engaging in any pleasurable activity, you stop any exercise. So what happens is you spiral, and I think men and mental health...
Come to that, Mike.
Oh, sorry.
That's right.
Yeah, I think men and mental health is really complex. Because, I see posters on the wall, it's good to talk and get out there and talk. And if you say to somebody who's depressed, give me a ring if you need anything, I find it's a complete cop-out, because they're not going to ring you.
No.
They're in a really comfort, warm place. So they're thinking, well, I don't need to ring, I'm all right. And they genuinely think they're okay, because that's the reality of their world. But they're shifting from mild to moderate. And once you start to go moderate to severe, you're becoming clinically depressed. So rather than a functional depression, like probably where I am now, and I'm happy and I'm enjoying things, but I have moments of tearfulness and sadness, you become moderate to severe. That's more clinical, and that's when you start to be unable to come back.
Can we talk what the differences of those stages might look like then for someone in mild versus moderate versus severe? What actions might we see in that individual?
Yeah, so if I was assessing somebody, it's a good question, Alex. So if I was assessing somebody, if it was mild, I'd look at their cognition, their thoughts, how morbid are they? If their thoughts are sad and they're missing that person, or they're starting to think about their own future and their own morbidity, one day I'm going to die, and that's all normal. And I think, they're processing loss, and they're processing the way they view the world and themselves. Then I look at the behaviour, cognitive behaviour. Are they doing things? Well, they're still at work. They're getting out and meeting their friends. They're not probably quite as social, but that's okay. But they're not isolating themselves dreadfully. So behaviourally, they're still engaging in those habits. And then emotionally, they've got flat affect. They're flat. So I would say that's mild, because behaviourally, they're going into that depression, but because they're keeping healthy behaviours, that should lift them back out of it. It's when you lose the behaviours. Everybody likes cognitive. We all like to talk about thoughts, but behaviours are really important. Once you lose the behaviours, then you're doing nothing to change your biology to help you pull back out of it. So you're sort of going deeper and deeper.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that would be mild. Moderate would be more morbidish thoughts. So they're starting to think, what's the point? Nobody loves me. I'm a burden. So I tend to think that's not good. That's more about yourself. You're not processing anything. You're more personalising it, and it's becoming pervasive. Right. Behaviourally, they've stopped socialising. They might be drinking a bit too much. They're at work, but they're not engaging in work. They're not talking to their family. Maybe going home and sitting in the conservatory type of behaviours. So they're there, but they're not there. So they're going through the motions type of thing. And I guess, the thoughts are more morbid. And then when you get to your severe, most people don't even like talking about their thoughts then, because they're trying to block them. Because they're not very nice at all. Emotionally, they're completely flat. They're not engaging, and behaviourally, they're losing all those habits, structure, purpose, routine. It's gone. And also on a biological level, you've got fatigue, poor concentration, poor memory, and all that. So that, I'd say moderate to severe then.
Yeah, I mean, that's fascinating just to think about that. And I think, when you find yourself in a bad, dark place, you think you've just ended up there, but usually you can trace it back to those stages that you've talked about. If you do find yourself in that bad place, do you have to work back through the stages, or is there a way out of that?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Or like the path there, do we have to take the path back?
Yeah, it's interesting. And again, I guess this comes back to men and talking, doesn't it? What we would say is you have to go behavioural. So moderate to severe depression needs to be treated behaviourally first. If you just do cognitive, and this is the danger with the well-being sort of agenda, if you just do cognitive, you could accidentally help that individual dig deeper. Because when we're depressed, we're very analytical. It's a little bit of a narcissistic disorder. It all becomes about ourselves. It's all consuming. We drain the living life force out of everybody around us, and so I guess you go very behavioural. So what we would do is say, go out and have a coffee with a friend. It's about doing. It's a behaviour that pulls people back up. You can't just think yourself out of depression. In fact, some of the most depressed people I've ever seen in my life are very analytical people.
Yeah, again, I never would have linked those two things, but I understand that now. Like, analysing your life from a place of severe depression can be very dangerous.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering whether that's what can tip people over the edge sometimes into suicide.
Yeah.
Because, So that makes total sense. Go and do something that might help your cognition before you sit there and analyse.
Yeah.
But as we know, the reality sometimes, like even a walk is terribly difficult for someone who's got severe depression. So, how do we educate people or encourage people to do those things that they know are good for them, even when everything's telling them not to do it?
Yeah, I think, it's hard. I guess we are doing that. We're educating the public, but it takes generations of people to understand that. So, because that initial cave that people go into, women as well, it's not just men, but you could argue more gender with males, that initial cave that you go into is warm, it's lovely, it's nice, you've got rid of all your friends, you've got no pressure, but we stay there for too long. That's the ultimate of it. Is going in is not necessarily the problem, we stay there too long and we don't come out.
So how will you know when it's time for you to move out of your mild?
That's it, the ultimate. Is
it mild?
Mild.
How will you know when it's time to move
my
out?
behaviour should naturally bring me back. So as long as my behaviours are in place, they should naturally bring me back.
But you'll have to notice this, right? So you'll have to be playing the observer role. Yeah,
you've got to be. And also some good friends. I've got a lovely daughter who keeps an eye on me. I know she does. She didn't tell me that, but she does.
So what's the difference between the observer and the brain then? So how do we differentiate? If the brain isn't the most reliable source, what is the observer? Is this a out of body kind of experience? Is this talking more about soul? Is this going beyond what we know?
I think it is, I do think it is. I don't think there's anything wrong in that moment of reflection, that existential time that we have. That just the problem is we stay there for too long. So somehow we've got to learn through things that you're doing, to be honest, Better Man and everything like this. We've got to learn that it's okay to be depressed, but you've just got to keep the behaviours going, the habits, so that you can come back up. The brain is primed for two things on evolution. It's pretty simple, really, but we get it wrong: threat and loss. So it's primed for the back part of the brain is primed to say goodbye to things from the moment we're sort of born, and to manage threat. And I guess when we're not doing it, rather than look at the environment, as you touched on earlier, we need to ask ourselves, what am I doing that's stopping my brain doing its natural job? So if I'm in threat, what am I avoiding that's stopping my brain from learning that threat's not going to kill me? avoidance usually. If I'm depressed, what am I doing that's stopping me from coming back up? So let's say, yes, say Dad passed September, so probably, and I'm going to be okay, I know that, but probably Christmas, a bit sad. So I'll carry on through there, carry on doing normal things, meet my family, my friends. I guess, February, March, I'd be thinking, well, you should be coming back up now, Al. You should be in and out of a little bit of mild of that. And so I guess you've got to monitor yourself like you would your physical health. If my knee was still hurting me in March, I'd probably go and see a doctor. So why don't we do that with our mental health?
I think it's a different experience, isn't it? The pain in the knee is so apparent.
Yeah. Like
it kind of forces you sometimes. Yeah. But even with physical health, like I'm guilty of this. I will work, and even if my knee's hurting, I'll carry on until my knee's really hurting.
Yeah.
And mental health is similar for a lot of people too. But yeah, everything you're saying is resonating very well, and it makes total sense, but it also creates a lot of new questions as well. I think you've answered the question about what a therapist does, though, because those questions that you've just referred to, they're fantastic questions that most individuals probably won't ask themselves.
Yes.
They might need some reinforcement or help in looking at those questions.
Yeah.
Questions are so powerful, aren't they?
Yeah.
Questions for me questions have probably changed my life, just asking the right questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Especially when you're not in a good place, you often ask questions that lead you further down into that dark hole. Like, what is the point of life? Like, why am I here?
Yeah.
All those questions that only have negative outcomes.
Yeah.
So I think the framing of those questions.
It's really important you say that. The cognition bit is so important because it's dangerous.
Is cognition all from the brain?
All thinking, everything involved in thinking, we call it cognition.
And thinking is from the brain?
Yeah, and so we would argue that when you moderate to severe depression, be careful of cognition, because you don't know what you're thinking. The body's telling the brain. So I've had people in the past that said, you know what, Alan, and when they've been moderate to severe depression, you know what, I had a terrible childhood, Alan. I said, well, what do you mean? I say, I don't think I grieved for my mum. And I'm thinking, okay, well, that was 25 years ago, and you probably have grieved, but now because you're depressed, you're going back to re-grieve. So you think you haven't grieved because you're thinking about that person all the time, but you have. And as their mood lifts and they start to get well again, I'll say, you thinking about your mum much? No, that's fine. That's all dealt with. So you've got to be careful that you don't almost think yourself deeper into a depression. Depression makes us think about the past, and the past is a domain for the depressive. So it's a vicious circle. So we try and keep people in the present and the future when they're severely depressed.
Yeah.
If you're going to think about the past, you do it purely to learn something, and you do it when you're well to stay well. Doing it when you're ill is not good.
You're making me really question the work that I'm doing in my writing now, which is great, by the way.
Right.
But I'm talking about using the past to help shape a better future, which I believe is true, but I'm now contemplating, well, it depends what stage you're at. This is why teaching anything to do with mental health is so difficult, because everything is but what if, what if, when, it's all timing. It's all when the individual's ready. It's all about introspection, self-study. And now I'm starting to see why it's such a difficult area to improve.
Yeah.
Because imagine trying to explain to every individual person that the art really is self-study and self-introspection. Because people like steps, don't they? If you do A, B, and C, you will feel great.
Yeah.
And there is no formula, really. There's things that we can do, though, each day, I believe, that put us in a better state to use our cognitive powers.
Yeah. Which,
again, is something I teach. It's the basics that seem so simple, they have almost become unimportant. Yeah. Like getting outside for 30 minutes. Yeah. If I tell another person to do that, it's that people will be thinking, oh, Alex, shut the fuck up. It's how many times have you said this? But it becomes truer and truer and truer and more important. Yeah. So it's those basic nucleus of things. It
really, the things that keep us well are the basic things.
They are.
When we went into the pandemic, the Behavioural Science Committee gave the government about 2 weeks and said, after about 2 weeks, you're going to start seeing mental health problems from lockdown. Obviously, 2 years later, we know what's happened, and the reason we were allowed to go out for an hour for a walk was the Behavioural Science Committee said, well, you can't take that away from a human being, and also it will probably keep them alive. So we didn't realise how important that 1 hour walk was.
What did you think about the restrictions that were placed?
I thought at first they were too much. I live on my own, so it hit me hard. But then I'm very lucky I've got a garden, so and I'm an extrovert, so it pinned me down a bit, and I was aware of that. Still couldn't stop it, the anxiety happening. So on a personal level, I thought it was too much. Looking back, it probably wasn't. It was what we needed, but you could debate that forever. But I think somebody said on an interview to Neil Greenberg, he was a psychiatrist to the British Army, did a lot of his interest in trauma, and he's now a government advisor, King's College London. And they said to him, now we're out the pandemic, mental health wise, and he turned around and he said, we're not out of the pandemic yet, we're not even coming out of it yet.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and he said basically and he's right, on a biological level it's about 1 to 2 years before your biology resets.
Yeah.
So, and that's for most conditions.
And do you think it will be the youngest that have been affected the high? So I know Jordan Peterson's big on the interaction, I think between 2 and 4 years of age, like, you know, learning how to play with other kids, for example. And some of those kids 2 years ago would not have experienced that. Yeah. So they might have difficulty now playing with other kids, but they might be 5 years old, 6 years old instead of 3. Yeah. So, yeah.
And a year to a 4-year-old is 25% of their life. Wow. Whereas a year to me, it's negligible, really. So I don't know how the brain would work of a 4-year-old having a quarter of their life taken away from them. Yeah. But it will be interesting to see what comes.
One thing that's really refreshing about you, Alan, and something I really respect, is that you've used the words anxiety and depression referring to yourself. Yeah. Which is really good, because I think obviously through the beautiful art of social media, it's very easy for coaches, mentors, life coaches, therapists to pretend that they've got a handle on all this stuff, and that they've removed depression and anxiety from their life. Yeah. And it's really nice to hear about you talking about it. Yeah. Because we all experience it, and I think the worst thing I've ever done is to try and remove all of that shit from my life. Alex, you never want to be depressed, you never want to be anxious, you never want to be fearful. Like, you want to live this life where you get up, spring out of bed, and it's sunshine and rainbows. And that actually brought me a lot more pain than this art of like, okay, this is life. Yeah. Life comes with this, life comes with that. Yeah. And just being accepting of it allows you to analyse it. Yeah. When you're in a better place. Yeah. To do that and to understand it a bit more and be okay with it and not feel as threatened by it. Yeah. So I think that's really useful for anyone listening to kind of know that it's part of the process. It's part of life. Especially if you're an ambitious guy, or you want a family and kids, like, those things are the things that might test you the most. Yeah. So relationships are my thing, Alan. I'll let you know that straight up. You know, always that's where my therapy kind of dived into. Yeah. It's almost like the thing that you love most can be the thing that can hurt you the most. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and you've got to be used to handling that good stuff comes with the opposite of that, of some trauma, some loss, some grief. Yeah. You know, our parents, for example, like you mentioned, comes with grief.
Yeah. Absolutely, everything's connected, and you touched on something there, and I do hope the listeners grasp the fact that the more you embrace pain, the more you can embrace the nice things in life. But the idea that we can remove the pain and then have a nice life, it's paradoxically impossible. And I guess even myself, in the job for 30 years, I didn't really believe it until probably my mum passed. I knew it was their depression. I'd read all the books, clinical research, and I tried to help clients as much as I can. But you only really know it either when you've got loved ones within it or yourself. And then it's fascinating how your reality can change. It's like putting a new pair of glasses on, isn't it? You know this, and you suddenly look out the fucking window and you think, that world's not my world. And although on one level you know it becomes your reality. And I found it's fascinating. You know,
I know it better now than I used to, but I never really considered that I created my own reality. I never thought about it. Yeah. And again, therapy's really helped me look at this, of like, Alex, have you made a lot of this stuff up? Like, you know, this reality, this world that you think of and feel and experience every day, how much of that is perception versus what it actually is? And it's hard to challenge. Yeah. Because I was really sure that how I thought was real. Yeah. My thoughts were facts, and I weren't going to budge from that. Yeah. And to try and be pulled away from that it was quite painful.
Yeah, and it's anger. It causes anger within yourself, because the brain doesn't like to be told it's wrong. It's like it's a little creature, and suddenly somebody comes along with a new piece of information, And you're like, fuck off, I'm not having that, you know, and I'm not having you either, because who are you to tell me what to do? You know, in fact, I'm going to drink more now. In fact, I'm not even going to meet you anymore. So we kick against it. And I think, you know, what you're doing, the Better Man and everything, is stopping people from kicking against seeking help.
Yeah.
And that's why I said I have an issue when people say, give us a ring if you need anything, with somebody with severe depression. I think, you know, they're not going to ring you. You're just making yourself feel better, but you know they're not going to ring you. If they're going to ring you, they wouldn't have severe depression. What you should do is you should phone them, and you should pop round, or you should, you know, say, well, I'm going to see you at 4 o'clock in Costas. Put some pressure and accountability on them so they don't want to let you down, so they'll turn up. Rather than just give us a ring if you need anything, because they just won't do it.
If I'm so involved in my own world, I'm not going to do that, no matter how much I love that person.
Yeah.
This is the issue. I mean, we're all persuaded to make the most out of life and drive and be ambitious, but that can sometimes take us away from connections like that. So if I'm too busy on my mission, you know, I haven't got an hour out of my day to be around somebody who's feeling depressed. Can't drag me down. I'm not going to let that happen. There's so many angles to look at this from being taking care of yourself to try and help your friends and your family and the ones that you love. Does it all start with the individual kind of like looking at their own shit, getting their own stuff together so that they can be the person that says, let's meet for a coffee and talk?
I think from our perspective, we would start with the individual, not the environment, because you start changing the environment, and the person will feel better temporarily, but the next time the environment becomes a problem, they haven't developed any resilience. So we live in the 6th richest country in the world. Are we more resilient than other countries? Probably not. Because our environment has given us everything we want within reason. So changing the environment and not helping the person adapt is a little bit dangerous. But there's nothing wrong with it, having some compassion and thinking, you know, this person needs help. But you've also got to look at the individual as well. But you've touched on something there that I think is, like you talked about paradoxical, it's so many angles to this. So we know that if you look at the wolf pack mentality and pack mentality and tribal mentality, it's very difficult for a man to talk and seek help because he's deemed as vulnerable on a sort of back part of the brain, a sort of tribal wolf pack mentality. He knows that eventually he'll be deemed as weak in a pack. And I've seen this a lot in occupational organisations where the man has become depressed and other people, they haven't bullied him, but they've put him down and his head's gone down. And then as he's got well, they've brought him back into the pack. And this goes on more and more. And again, it's another issue of where you surround yourself with good people. You've got to surround yourself with good people, otherwise pack mentality does come. And if you're limping along in life, and you said, and you're quite rightly, it's absolutely draining for loved ones. You know, living with somebody who's depressed, that person usually ends up with depression at some point. As that person gets well, the other person goes down. It's quite common in psychiatry because it's been so draining living in that environment of loss that the other person starts to go down as well. So it's a contagion to some degree. So
can environment then not shape the individual to do the things that they know are right? So for example, 8-9 years ago, I joined a group of, it was a group run by a guy called Paul Moore, and the emphasis was, you know, you get up each day, you spend some time doing self-care, collecting your wins so that you can shine a light on some of the stuff that's going well. And there was a load of stuff. And it was like, well, everyone else was doing it, so I did it. Right. And it started to you know, to bring fruit. It started to really help me. Yeah. And that was like a gang mentality. It's just I felt like I'd aligned myself to the right gang at the time. Yeah. So by definition, like the environment really shaped who I became. Yeah. Whilst working on myself. Yeah. But you're right. Like if I didn't do what the rest of the guys were doing, I would have been out. Just like 2,000 years ago. Yeah. You don't keep up with the pack, you're gone. Yeah. So I'm wondering now whether it's a good thing, not a good thing, whether this is down to timing. I don't know. Like, is it good that we align ourselves to groups where there is a threat that we could be left behind if we don't keep up? Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I don't know. I think it's interesting, isn't it? I'm a firm believer that you surround yourself
with good people.
Uh-huh.
The only times I've probably struggled in my life, and even watching this is when I've surrounded myself with, and I wasn't that good, so I can't blame them. It just brings out the dark shadow in you sometimes. You know, we've all got a little bit of a naughty streak and everything. So, and it's fun, and bad people can still be fun and nice, you know. So, yeah, but I suppose as we get a bit older, it's important to surround yourself with people who are going to bring the best out of you.
Yeah,
really, and that's probably my biggest advice to any person, male or female, is surround yourself with good people. Because when your head's down, if you haven't got good people around you, you're not going to come back.
What are good people?
Good people who will keep you structured, purposeful. So you've just touched on something interesting. You've got to have threat. You've got to have some threat to get well. So if we're overly compassionate and say, don't worry about it, you don't have to get out of bed today, I'll bring you a cup of tea up, and, you know, put the telly on in the bedroom, and you just stay comfortable, and you don't have to go to work for 6 months because they're going to pay you, and they're really caring employers and everything, and you're depressed, there's the odds are you'll go spiral. So there's got to be a sense of threat that says either the pack won't let you back in, because, you know, they've told you they'll support you, but they won't nurture you, you're not a baby. So you've got to be some threat for you to get back to society.
How do we train resilience then, if without machoism, without alpha male mentality? How do we make ourselves tough?
Yeah.
In the sense that we can cope in the world and that we can withstand those storms.
Yeah.
How do we do that without becoming the guy who doesn't want to be vulnerable, that macho guy that's boom? Yeah. How do we do that? How do we balance those things?
This is interesting. This is what I'm reading about at the moment about the male really losing the identity. The alpha male that probably would have succeeded, just 100 years ago, the alpha male does not fit in now. But that doesn't mean that alpha male's wrong. It's just that society's shifting that quickly that we're struggling to adapt as men, I think. Yeah.
And the alpha male surely still shows himself, but perhaps in the wrong ways.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. What's an alpha male?
Alpha male would me to be, it's about strength. So you talked about resilience there, and I teach, we've got a resilience module at Staffordshire University, and it's a 4-day module that I lead, and we spend nearly the first day, certainly more than half of it, trying to define resilience. Because it's a degree and master's level, so I'm trying to get them to think. And the more we read, the more we're struggling with it, because we're like, well, it's not really about being mentally strong. It's because sometimes, as we've just said about depression, you need to be weak at times. You need to bow down. Life's beating the shit out of you. Lie down, lick your wounds, and then slowly come back up. Don't bounce back. That word, bounce back. You bounce back too quick, you're going to go down even deeper because you've just been battered. So the whole definition of resilience goes from the alpha male, the strong, mental toughness, and it brings in that kind of muscles and, the ability to control the environment, I guess. Whereas what we're looking at now is adaptability and flexibility, the ability to control yourself. And there's got to be a middle ground, Alex. I'm 57. I hope we get there, but I think there is a middle ground.
I think there is. I think I'm finding the middle ground in the challenge is to be tough in the art of vulnerability. So to be vulnerable as a man is very challenging.
Yeah.
So for me, there's toughness there needed. There's courage, strength needed.
Yeah.
To be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to not be, and you feel like you're being strong, but actually you're not. You're being weak.
Yes.
Because you're running away from things. You're running away from that threat that we talked about.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm tough, no one can hurt me.
Yeah.
And we know where that leads us to, right? This lack of connection. So I'm like, okay, well now it makes sense. Because I hated that word vulnerability for years. I hated it. It just sounded so weak and pathetic to me until I really understood what it meant.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And then I'm like, well, there's actually real strength there. The men I admire most are the most vulnerable. They put themselves out there. Yeah. They are in good relationships where, they're trusting of their partners. Yeah. I mean, how scary is that to trust the woman you love? Yeah. It's terrifying.
With your happiness and that and everything.
Yeah. Or what you deem your happiness, Yeah. And the strongest individuals so there's a guy called Matty, Tony Summers is a great example. Yeah. Jeff Thompson, they're in such a good place that they love their partners to bits, but they're not attached to the outcome. So although they love their partner so much, they know they'll be okay if their partners aren't around.
Yeah.
And that's true strength
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
Right there, that you can love someone so much, but you'd also know that if that love wasn't around,
Yeah.
you're so in tune with yourself that you know you'll be okay.
Yeah.
And that's a new level.
Yeah, and I guess that is ultimate middle ground, and that's hard to get to.
Very hard.
That is hard to get to. And I guess throughout my work with organisations, I won't mention the organisations, but manufacturing type organisations or the emergency services where you've got proper men, from a social engineering background, and to watch them walk into my office, and you can see their eyes are red, and they've got so much cortisol, which is your stress hormone, in them. You can see it, the neck's red and the clammy, and this guy needs a good cry. That's what you think. And you think, okay, how am I going to press this button so he has a good cry? And then he'll be embarrassed for a little bit. Then he'll realise his world didn't end, and actually it was, and he felt better. So then we can start really then moving on. And they do, and I've had a lot of guys say to me over the years, you know what, Al, I used to take the fucking piss out of depression. I didn't even think it exists. And now they're in the middle of the dark bit of it, and I'll say, well, eat humble pie, it's okay. We're a set of chemicals at the end of the day, and whether it starts off psychological and ends up biological, or starts off biological and ends up psychological, it's cyclic. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, crying is a strange experience.
Do you cry?
Again, I try not to.
Right.
It's just natural to not cry.
Yeah.
I mean, I do like a little cry occasionally, but it's strange. I think now I've become probably more comfortable crying in front of guys than I have women.
Yeah.
It's strange. Things are always changing. And it's funny what you said about, if you look back 10 years about some of the advice that you were giving out, you'd probably be a bit... I'm like that from 6 months ago, because things change.
Yeah.
I'm really okay with that. I'm okay with changing my mind on stuff.
Yeah.
But going back to this tear thing, it's... one, it's a sign that you're starting to feel things. So I can listen to music now and cry.
Yeah. Yeah, music's excellent.
Yeah, just the lyrics and...
Yeah.
But again, I'm like, well, is this healthy, or am I just using this to fuel some form of depression? Because I love my Johnny Cash dark lyrics, because they make me feel something.
Yeah.
But they also make me think about the past too.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether that's healthy or what, but I do it.
Yeah.
And I want to do it.
Yeah. And
I don't question whether it's good. I just want to.
Yeah.
But I think there's a bit of victim mentality still lingers around in my life.
Right. What do you mean?
Well, I don't want to move on entirely, because it's a
okay.
bit like you say. That's quite a warm place.
Yeah.
That depression, that cynical outlook on life is quite warm.
Yeah.
There's some certainty in there, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So to break free of that,
even
the concept of being happy is like, well, there's some resistance there to be happy.
Yeah.
Because it's all I've known.
Yeah.
And it's my work.
Yeah.
I love talking about pain.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it.
It is. And I guess the two psychologists that wrote the paper that got me realising that mild depression is normal, they put a sentence in it, I think a bit of humour, but they put that, therefore, mild depression is reality and happiness is a delusion. And then every now and again, we come out of our delusion when we go through loss or something, see reality, grieve, and then run off back to our happiness.
That's incredible. You're right. So many people chase happiness, and you're right. I've never linked the two words illusion and happiness.
Yeah.
And most people's version of happiness is an illusion. It's a life without problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that doesn't exist, and nor should it, because imagine a life without no problems. It means that there's nothing in your life worthy of having.
Yeah.
The depression that you're talking about was because you had a mum that you loved.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, who would give that up?
Yeah.
And there's a theory called terror management theory. I don't know if you've heard it.
Yeah, I have, yeah.
And it's fascinating about how the brain... We're the only animal on the planet that knows we're going to die from the moment we're sort of 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So how do we deal with that terror? And it's basically, Freud called it defense mechanisms, but the brain shuts the doors to it, and we get off and potter around, and every now and again the brain will open the doors of hell, especially when we go through a bereavement and we're in that mild depression, and then before we get to the severe, the brain should shut the doors again and say, go back to your happiness now. You've seen hell. And as we get older, the doors open a little bit more, so by the time we're dying, we're okay. So it's exposure all our lives. We're gradually exposed to it.
So like you're kind of fed the concept of death, is that what you mean?
Yeah, bit by bit. But the first bereavement we ever have is usually the doors open too wide and it frightens us to death. And that's why we shouldn't overly protect our children from losses. We should let them experience it.
Yeah, that makes sense too.
Yeah,
I think looking back, I don't think death, even when someone died, it didn't feel that real when I was young.
Yeah.
It feels more real now that I'm 38.
Yeah.
Like it's actually real, like loss, like look around, it's happening all the time.
Yeah.
My first girlfriend at school, her name was Jenna, she's just passed away my age.
Gosh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's just like the older you get, the more you start to experience it. Now that can do two things. It can either make you stop and really think about your own mortality.
Yeah.
Or it starts to become just normal, like, oh, so-and-so passed away.
Yeah.
You know, my dad's age, he was talking about some of his friends now, there's like a bunch of them aren't alive anymore.
Yeah.
He's 68, and it's just normal.
Yeah.
And I think it can affect people in different ways.
Yeah.
Some people do like to shut the door on death.
Yeah.
And pretend it doesn't exist and it's not going to get them.
Yeah.
It's easier.
We've got sometimes some people with death phobia, and you literally only have to mention that, and they can't do it. They're very obsessionally blocked it out. Not healthy at all.
No, or people are, oh, don't be so negative, as if like it's an option that it might happen or not.
Yeah.
Do you use death then to drive and determine what you do with your life?
Yeah, I mean, Martin Seligman talks a lot about this with the resilience work. The American, psychologist. He's absolute brilliant guy. But anybody who's interested in reading, if you read The Authentic Child, Martin Seligman,
not that damn child again.
Yeah, it's just all about authenticity, and but he talks about what Seligman talks about is you have to embrace the idea of death in order to embrace the idea of living.
Yeah.
And there's two ways to look at death, isn't there? You can think, what the fuck's the point? Why am I mowing the lawn? Why am I working hard? Because that's where I'm going to end up anyway. Or you can think, let's just enjoy the fucking journey.
Yeah.
So completely two ways to look at it, and we have choice which one we look at. We have ultimate choice which one we look at.
Okay. How do we determine which one? So how do we make a choice?
We you can go and have therapy, which is fine, or you can talk to your friends, or you can just I always call it, give yourself a good talking to.
Yeah.
I was doing this in the pandemic a bit, because every now and again I was spiraling into some kind of moaning, whinging. Oh God, I can't go to the pub, and I haven't seen my friends for. It's hardly a third world problem, really. And every now and again I thought, you know what, Alan, how lucky are you? But I had to give myself a good talking to, and I don't think we do that enough. I don't think we do that kind of self-talk. Give ourselves a good kick up the arse.
But like I say, it's dangerous, because who's doing the talking?
Yeah.
Because there's driving yourself down into the ground with a good talking to,
Yeah.
and then there's talking to yourself with that tough love that you need.
Yeah.
And it's just being aware of who's talking.
Yeah.
That's the thing, because Alex can be quite destructive and quite
Right.
damaging. If you let him talk, that guy,
Yeah.
he might lead me in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
But then there's this other Alex that's actually, he's got his head screwed on, man.
Yeah.
He's the doorman, he's the guy at the front, he's the
Yeah.
chief. He's the guy you want to be listening to. So it's just knowing which of these eyes is doing the work. So I believe there's different
There
parts
is,
of us.
and I guess and again, what you're doing with this concept, it's social contact comes up as probably the most important thing in this. So we have a red flag clinically with single men living alone. We worry about that group of people, and that's because the research is quite clear about that. They're the group of people who tend to stay in depression for much too long until their thoughts become real. And
what age group are we talking here?
It tends to be there isn't really a mix at the moment. They're saying things like loneliness and that are affecting people in their 20s a lot. They're probably the most loneliest generation, which I find really sad. Because that's where you socially should be booming. But my own personal experience is sort of 45 to 55 age group of men. Because if you're living alone, so if you're not socialising and you've got a morbid thought, let's talk about a thought being something that's in a little box.
Okay.
So you've got a cognition, a thought, and that thought says, I'm no good to anybody. That's that thought. So you're sitting alone in the house, I'm no good to anybody, I'm a burden. And then what happens is, as your mood goes down further, maybe drinking more, not going out, the thought, the omnipotence of that thought, the power of it grows. So what starts off as, well, that's just a negative thought because I'm mildly depressed. That's fine. Because you're allowing your mood to go down further and further, that thought becomes stronger and stronger and becomes your reality.
Yeah.
And because you live alone and you've got nobody to share that thought with, it stays in the box. And what you try and do is lock the box tighter. I don't want that thought. But there's a rebound effect of that, is that thought is fighting to get out that box more and more. And eventually it will always come out the box. And then it becomes that person's reality, and that's when the person's more likely to act on that thought. So what starts off as like an intrusive thought becomes a morbid intrusive thought. So talking is actually scientifically very good for us, but we especially men, we think talking's all touchy-feely stuff in the sky, but exploring a cognition is really important. So if I was sitting with you and I went, do you know what, Alex, I've got this thought about I'm worthless and I'm no good to anybody, and you went, all right, Al, but let's talk about that thought. Suddenly I open the box, and instead of it being a dark, horrible thought, it's a silly thought because I've shared it. So the power of the thought, I'm less likely to act on it because I've shared it.
Yeah. If I said that to my friends, I'm not sure what reaction I'd get. I think I'd get some reassurance that I'm a decent person. We'd move on as quickly as fucking possible.
Yeah.
Go back to talking about football.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, I understand that. And this is why I do like this podcast, for example. It's the freedom to speak with someone like yourself, not feel stupid. And I get a lot of messages off guys saying, well, thanks for talking about that. Because it's something that I haven't been able to speak about.
Yeah.
So I think it's powerfully important. Talking I believe in, but I also believe like who you talk to is just as important.
It is.
There was a huge time in the mental health industry where it was driven on, guys, just talk, even if it's to the stranger down the pub, and I'm like, really?
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Really? Because it might have taken me years to have the courage to say I'm feeling like this, and someone might go, don't be so fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Boom, back to square one and worse.
Yeah.
So I'm like, who you share these thoughts with, I think is really important.
Yeah.
And again, the safety of therapy.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
it is. And I guess it's a whole culture, isn't it? But yeah, you've nailed on the head there. I see posters on walls all the time. It's good to talk, and you're thinking, you're really going to go up to somebody and talk about an intrusive thought about the world or your future, yourself, to somebody you hardly know? No, you're not.
I've noticed that when you do some kind of physical activity with men that requires struggle and bonding, then men are more likely to open up. So we do a lot of mountain climbing.
Right.
So we did Snowdon,
right,
which is the highest peak in Wales. So everyone starts, typical guys, like, hello, how you doing, shaking hands, you know. So we climb up this mountain, it's raining, it's tough, everyone's tired, you know. Then a bit of encouragement starts. Come on, mate, you can do this, you know. And we spur, and we're all hurting, we're all in pain, but we all help each other out and get to the top. Almost like the walls are down then, because we've been through this experience together. Yeah. Then we have a beer at the end, and everyone's just different. Yeah. Everyone's talking about like struggles and challenges.
Brilliant.
And like, it's so good. And I'm always wondering whether there's something behind the art of actively putting yourself in voluntary positions of challenge. Yeah. And of almost pain, like you pick your pain a bit, and you do it with other guys that go through that journey with you, and then you're in a position to be able to talk a little bit more. I've noticed that.
100%. I mean, again, that's 100% about whether it's because we're pack animals, whether because we're sharing pain. There's something that goes on that enables us to sort of open up. And I noticed that at West Midlands Fire Service, where the stations are very close together, because they go out, you know, they put each other's lives in each other's hands. So they have an amazing ability that when somebody's down, the other firefighter will go, "You're not yourself, are you?" And they'll go, "I'm struggling with a divorce, or my son's taking drugs, or well, why don't we talk?" And you know, it's amazing sort of connectivity that goes on with it. If they're not close, it can be just as problematic, because they're just friction or something. But generally, we don't see that.
Yeah, but if there's four of us going into a fire together, right, and you know that I have to have your back, you have to have mine, that's a real strong form of bonding. Yeah. And I'm wondering where men get that from today. Yeah. So you talk about this loneliness. So yes, I think it is for men that live on their own, but I think anyone can experience loneliness, right? Yeah. Because I think a lot of our connections now come through a screen versus in person. Yeah. So, you know, I've got thousands of friends on Facebook.
Yeah.
I've probably got 10 really good friends in
Yeah.
life. It's like completely different worlds.
Yeah, what's his name? It'll come to me. John Arden, who's a neuroscientist, American neuroscientist. He wrote a book called The Brain Bible.
Okay.
And each chapter, each chapter covers the subject matter. So you've got social contact, education, exercise, diet and sleep, and each chapter covers the neuroscience benefits of each one of them. And he talks about social contact, how the back part of the brain, and they talk about one study where they looked at Facebook, and it doesn't stimulate the brain at all on a social level, not very much at all.
No, it takes you into what I call zombie land.
Yeah.
So I see people at the gym, and again, I try not to be judgmental, but I am. But just because I know how damaging it is, and because I've been there, I can see other people's behaviours in myself. That's why I can see them, because I'm as guilty as the next man. But at the gym, like, people were on there, and it was scary. I looked around and everybody was just like that, and I was like, people aren't even awake.
No.
People are asleep. So I'm like, this is where it's hard not to become cynical.
Yeah.
This is where it's hard. So, I mean, it's great that you're here saying the industry's changing, because I need to hear that.
It is, honestly.
Yeah, I need to hear that. And maybe that's because of some of the great work you're doing. And, you know, there's some great stuff happening in the Better Man as well. We're doing some great things. However, it still feels like such a small minority.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's such a rare thing to meet an individual who's prepared to do the work on himself rather than think about the government, the Ukraine war.
Yeah, the environment.
It's so difficult to ever explain to someone, well, your world is you, it's in you. Yeah. So it only makes sense to go back and do the work there and self-observe.
Yeah. I guess it's connectivity, isn't it? If you said to me, what's the starting point, it's got to be the connectivity side of it. And from the 1986 to now, we've come such a long way, Alex. And, you know, what you're doing, you wouldn't have existed in 1986.
Yeah.
You know, well, you might have, but you'd have been very much on your own. It just wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
So, you know, 2016 or whatever we are now, you know, 2022, you're doing this. You wouldn't have been allowed to do it in the 80s, or it would have been token gesture.
Yeah. I try now to just do what I'm certain of. So I'm certain that some form of physical exercise and outdoor adventure is good for you.
Yeah.
I'm pretty certain that meeting in environments of other men that are on a similar mission, that want to improve themselves, is a good thing to do.
Yeah.
I'm very certain that introspection is the way forward for every individual.
Yeah.
Not just in terms of gaining more knowledge, but just stepping back and observing themselves.
Yeah.
Because that's quite a scary thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, when you have a tantrum as a grown man and you realise you're acting like a fucking child.
Yeah.
To see that's really scary.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh my God, I'm like 5 again.
Yeah. The level of anger that comes up.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of watching a little toddler throw his like toys out the pram.
Yeah.
And you're like, shit, that's me as a 38-year-old man.
Yeah. Yeah. It is, that's why I quite like Carl Jung's stuff, you know, when he talks about the dark shadow and everything. It did help me a lot, you know, and Peterson, when you realise actually we're not perfect, we're fucking far from perfect. Yeah. And in fact, the more perfect you try and be, the more you're going to fuck up. You know,
that's so right. What do you do with your like dark side? Like, how do you channel that stuff that's in you? Like, rather than hide it, what do you do with it?
So more social, really. Have a good laugh and take the piss and you know have fun. Don't hurt people, but we have men's talk. You know, when we're out, we have a good laugh and you know, don't take life too seriously.
Okay. How do you do that? That's something I'm still yet to even get close to. Everything's so fucking serious in my world.
Yeah, I think one of the problems is we're animals and we're extreme, so we either take it too seriously or not seriously enough. You know, that middle ground. I said to a firefighter recently, he'd had a bad back, and I said that he'd been to see a surgeon. The surgeon said, you can get back on your bike. Now, most firefighters and most men are all or nothing. Yeah. You know, it's in our genetics. We either won't fucking do it or we'll do it madness until we kill ourselves. So this surgeon had said you can go cycling about 3 to 4 miles. So he was talking to him and he went, I don't fucking see the point in that. What's the point in that? I used to cycle John O'Groats to Land's End. And I said, well, you might do again, but just do 3 or 4 miles. So he came back to see me about 3 weeks later. He'd buggered his back up. He'd done 50 miles. So I had a bit of a laugh with him. I said, what part of that did you get stuck with then, that 4 miles? And he looked, he went, I just don't see the point, so I'm not going to cycle anymore. And I went, oh, right, so you're not going to cycle anymore because you can't do 50 miles. And we were having a laugh about it, and he said, because of his personality, he just could not see the point in doing it. And I think we are very all or nothing.
Yeah, that's the typical man you've just described. Yeah, I hear that all the time. Guys who are on the comeback, and then they compare to what they used to do 20 years ago. And like they say, they think if they can't reach that level within a week, then what's the point?
Yeah. And I get that a lot with depression. When people they're nearly out of depression, but they'll go, yeah, but I used to go to the gym 5 times a week, and I'd be out there socially, and I'd be good at my job. And you're like, you'll never get that because you were burning out.
Yeah.
So when you go back, you're going to be more middle ground based, and we don't like the middle ground. It's boring.
It is, yeah.
So I guess what you're doing with the climbing, I'm just thinking this out loud, climbing Snowdon, is you're giving people a bit of extreme. So they can be all or nothing, because we do need a little bit of that.
Yeah, what I like about it is every guy there knows his purpose for the day.
Yeah.
So we've got to get to the top of that mountain and back down.
Yeah.
And we've got to do it as a team. So I'm like, well, there's an aim.
Yeah.
What I love about it is, fellas, don't think about getting to the top. Think about one step at a time.
Yeah.
So although I've just said, do you know what I mean? Our mission is there, but right now it's one step at a time. I love that, and I'm like, fellas, this isn't just about you, it's about helping your teammates up.
Yeah.
So taking yourself out of that depression of everything's about me.
Yeah.
Things like climbing mountains have everything: grit, resilience, character building, camaraderie.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
And I guess you're doing what Peterson always says, responsibility. You're giving people responsibility. Without responsibility, we shrivel up and die.
Sure. Yeah. And there is an element of fear and threat.
Yeah.
So Alan, like, you know, everyone's going to get up that mountain.
Yeah.
Don't be the guy that doesn't fucking do it.
Yeah.
So there is fear, but there's reward too.
Yeah.
So but the hardest thing is getting the guys to show up, because I think deep within themselves, they know that they're going to be challenged.
Yeah.
And I think if you're feeling frail or depressed or not at your best, you don't want to be challenged.
Yeah.
When in fact, it's probably what you need, because you can do that.
Yeah.
You just need to prove to yourself that you can do that.
Yeah.
Literally, some of the guys start, honestly, and they come down, they look like they've lost about 6 stone of just stress. Because they're like, I'm not as worthless as I thought I was.
Yeah.
It's that feeling.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I did it.
Yeah.
All that nerves that I had coming here today,
Yeah.
all that fear, all that doubt about should I just turn back and go home, gone.
Yeah.
Fucking hell, I've done it.
Yeah.
I'm stronger than I thought.
And that's what we would call a cognitive shift. So that person's made a cognitive shift, and that will generalise to lots of other areas of their life.
Yeah.
So then they'll start questioning, why am I putting myself down so much? Yeah. And then they'll start doing other things. So you've done what we call a domino effect.
Okay.
That walk up that mountain could help them 2 weeks later. You might not ever know that.
Yeah.
But they might think, you know what, I did that walk, so I can do this. So, and that's where the brain starts to relearn information.
Yeah. No, one of the guys straight away signed up for a charity boxing match, lost 10 kilos. And he said simply, I had so much self-doubt and thought I was a piece of shit until I climbed that mountain.
Yeah.
He was like, I realised I could actually do something. I could push myself. I think we lose, there was something in the words that you sent me, it was the loss of self.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's a brilliant little phrase there, loss of self. I think every man at some stage loses himself.
Yeah.
What shows up when someone loses themselves, and then how does someone go about reclaiming themselves?
Yeah, I mean, Seligman talks about this, about loss of meaning and purpose and self. And what Seligman would say is, do you go out and find meaning like you go to Tesco's and buy a loaf of bread, or do you have to just go through life and meaning will come to you? And it's a second one, you know. But because so you got cognitive and behaviour, thinking and doing. If you just think, you'll never find meaning. But when we're depressed, we think and think and think and think and think, and until we're climbed up our own arse and we can't think anymore. But we haven't attached any healthy behaviours, and it's the healthy behaviours that find the meaning. You know, so I could go out. I've never done this, by the way, and collect a stamp, and then think, oh, I quite like buying that stamp. I'm going to collect some more stamps. And suddenly that was quite nice, finding that stamp in that shop. I'm going to go and get another stamp. And so meaning's coming to me. The brain will find meaning if we're behaviourally engaged in life.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at things. I started working with a guy last week he was really smart and intellectual and clever, but he literally thought himself into a dark hole. Yeah. Like, he'd asked so many questions about the purpose of life that he'd forgot to live it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So he was like, and I could see why, because I've been there, he'd become really nihilistic. Yeah. I was like, well, fucking hell, there is no purpose. Yeah. What do I do? Yeah. But it's interesting, you know, when you said like you're cutting the lawn and like you're thinking, what's the point of this? Yeah. Sometimes I'll be doing something, Alan, like really constructive, really good work. I'll be in flow. Like I'll be writing my book, for example, and all of a sudden this wave comes across me and goes, "What the fuck are you doing this for? It's pointless. Pointless. Who do you think you are? You're going to die. No one gives a fuck." Or just out of nowhere, boom. I think it's out of nowhere. You might say different.
Yeah.
But it's literally like some force has just thrown this and reminded me that, it's a waste of time.
Yeah, or don't be too happy. Or
don't get above your station, is what we were saying.
I was driving to work. I always share this with clients about 2 years ago. It was a sunny day, driving to work, and I had this almost manic moment of like, fuck me, life's good. And the blue sky, and I enjoyed my job, and I thought, can't get much better than this, Al, radio on. And then suddenly, the hounds of hell opened, and when I thought, got a lovely daughter, great grandson, they're all happy, and then this little voice come in and said, but you're going to die soon, and your daughter's going to have to watch you die, and then you're going to not see her ever again, and you're never going to see your grandson, and there's tears coming. I thought, fucking hell, where did that come from? And it's paradoxical. And I think you have to have that. It levels the playing field, because I was getting maybe too happy.
Yeah, I think the universe does bring you back to centre.
Yeah.
Like if you get above your station, I think it will humble you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And you've got to make sure you don't get pulled down too much.
Yeah.
But the same thing, I was with my mum and dad a couple of Christmases ago. They looked so happy. Yeah, I was so sad, because I knew that one day it would go. Yeah. Isn't that fucking crazy? Yeah. And I knew, I'm smart enough to know that enjoy this, be present. Yeah. But there's something was saying, this is going to end. Yeah. It's going to not only end, it's going to end in tears. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So don't get too fucking happy. Yeah. These presents that you're owning mean fuck all. Yeah. Stuff like that. And even in my dreams, sometimes I get humbled so hard. Yeah. So I was walking with my family last week. It was my birthday. My family came over. Right. It was nice. And we walked past this church, and there was this beautiful ceremony going on. And I said something a little bit mocking about religion and the church. And I had a dream to remind me that, like, don't be so sure that there isn't something out there more powerful than you. It was a really strange dream. I was doing my thing like I normally do. Then this camera started zooming out on me, and it made me realise that I was so small on this spinning earth. Right. And then it carried on zooming out, and it started to zoom out so you could see space. And all of a sudden, all these flying crucifixes spinning around were flying past me, thousands of them. They were like asteroids, but just crucifixes spinning. Yeah. There was a little voice saying, "Look, you think this is real? Like, don't be so sure that there's nothing bigger out there. Don't even be so sure this is real." I was like, "What is this about?
Yeah. Level the playing field, isn't it? It does. Yeah.
It's weird, like you say. It makes you realise that what you do is really important, yet what you do is totally insignificant. Yeah. So how do you coexist in that paradox? Yeah.
Introspection, as you say, that's all we can do. But the behaviour, I mean, the one thing, people have got to hold on to healthy behaviours. Yes. To cogitate is nice, and thinking is nice. But if you're just thinking and you're not doing, it's dangerous.
Yeah, I delivered a training on this exact same thing the other day. You can sit there and goal set all you want. Yeah. But how about we do some good stuff? Yeah, like absolutely. Because the ambition usually comes to you when you do the right things. Yeah. So rather than sit and try and plan your life on a piece of paper, well, go out there and live it. Yeah. Go out there and climb a mountain and see what fucking comes to you.
See what happens.
Yeah. One of the best things I've done for my own cognitive process is to go through a process from a book by Cal Newport. No. It's called Digital Minimalism. Right. And it helps you basically turn the noise down inside your head. Right. Because, it's big on like, well, let's cut the scrolling of Instagram. Let's forget taking an hour to see what everyone else is doing. Yeah. And let's put some thought behind your own actions. Let's get you out walking instead of scrolling. Yeah. And honestly, you see the world so differently because all this noise has suddenly started to die down. And then you can hear what you're thinking. You can see what you're thinking. Because until you can see those things popping up in your head, you're like, well, I can't do anything with them. Yeah. So everything starts to become a bit crisper, a bit clearer. You can control and direct. Oh, it's been brilliant for me. Yeah. Hard. Yeah, that's really difficult not to get pulled because distractions are external and internal, aren't they? You've got stuff out there, TV, phone, all that bullshit. Yeah. Then you've got the internal distractions that pull you away, your thoughts. Yeah, that critic, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, that's good. The external noise, we've got to remove it somehow.
Busy, isn't it?
Yeah, very busy. Yeah.
Are you an ambitious guy?
It's interesting that. I think I am. I'm still highly motivated work-wise.
What are you motivated by?
I'm motivated because I've seen the improvement. I never thought I'd see this kind of improvement in mental health. We've always been a very poor second cousin to physical health. Where back in the 80s and the 90s, and mental health is now on the agenda, and people like yourselves and other people are out there doing amazing stuff. So for me, it's a good time in my career. I never thought I'd see this day.
Okay. Well, that's good.
So, yeah, and I can only reassure you on that because you haven't seen it. All you could do is go, well, we could do a lot better, and I get that we can do a lot better. But from my perspective, I'm going, no, you are doing a lot better.
Okay.
So if you can hold on to that.
Yeah, I will. I think when you do the introspection on yourself, like, one, you realise how much work there is to do. The problem is you often start to see things in other people that you might not like too.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? When you wake up and you see things for what they are.
Yeah.
Like, and again, I know that sounds really judgmental, but it's just true.
Yeah.
You know, if you see yourself not being a distracted person and you can manage that,
yeah.
but then you see everyone else is distracted,
yeah.
or most people, it's a little bit painful.
Yeah.
Like, because you're like, oh, fuck. Like, I've woke up, I can see what's going on. I can see that everyone's got their head in their phone.
Yeah.
Before, I didn't notice because I had my head in my phone.
Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword, the
Yeah.
self-awareness game.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have it any other way.
Good.
The mental health checklist that you talk about.
Yep.
Or that you refer to in one of your teachings.
Yeah.
Can we talk through that? Like,
yeah,
what might be a good way for a guy just to stop and maybe do a little bit of either an MOT or a checklist, or ask some questions that might pull him back to where he actually is, then help him observe what he's doing?
Yeah, so what you've got is you can have a bad day and you can have a bad week, but if you've had a bad month, we call that prodromal. So it's what we mean by that is it's long enough to start getting ill. So bad day, that's okay. Bad week, keep an eye on it. But a bad month, then could be on a road, not a good road. So I would say to most people, review your life every month. And that can be with a glass of wine with your partner. It can be coffee, with your friend. It can be anything. But it's good to do it with somebody else. Because again, introspection on your own is difficult. And then what you do, you go through like a cognitive behavioural assessment of yourself. Now, to get rid of the jargon, all that means is what are you thinking and what are you doing? So I'd look at so if I was doing it on myself, I'd think, right, so how many hours have you worked this month, Al? Have you had any time to do some enjoyable things? Not really. It's been a busy month and I'm tired. So I start to look at my physiology. My concentration's not good. I'm tired. I'm not sleeping well. I'm fatigued. I'm irritable and snappy. So I'd write that down. And then I'd put behaviourally, what am I doing? Well, I'm working long hours. I haven't been out to see my friends. I'm not really doing. I'm not eating well. In fact, I haven't really been eating routinely for the last few weeks. And then I'm just picking it up early. That's all you're doing. And we don't have those check-in conversations. But like you said, if you had a bad knee and you were having a beer with your mate, your knee was hurting. You'd probably say at some point, fuck me, my knee hurts. And your mate might go, you know what, you need to go to physio about that, or you need to go to the doctor about that. But we don't have this mental health discussion like, I've had a bit of a bad month, or I'm working really hard. Well, you need to take your foot off the accelerator then. Yeah. Is
that what you do for your own?
Yeah, we're taught to do it ourselves. We're not taught, but we're told to do it. And when I went down the rabbit hole in 2016, I didn't do it very well. But generally I'm pretty good at it, generally.
Do you not find it difficult, let's just say you've had a rough few days.
Yeah.
Do you not find it difficult to see outside of those few days and look back for the month? So I have to do some form of checking every day.
Right.
Because it's the realist data that I've got.
Right.
So if you said, Alex, I want you to think back 4 weeks, let's talk about how your month's been, I think I'd sit there going, well, and I could probably make stuff up.
Interesting.
So I have to do it every single day, and then I look back at the data and not how I feel.
Right.
Does that make sense? So I can separate my feelings from what's really going on.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I feel like I've doing terribly in life, and then I have a look at what I've actually done, and you've shown good character here, you've done a good achievement here, spent time with your mum and dad here.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it takes me out of that, well, right now I feel like shit.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say doing it daily, maybe that's just for me, if you're poorly, then doing it daily is okay. But if you're well, doing it daily, you could be like digging up stuff you don't need to. So I'll give you an example of this, actually, because I missed a trick with this guy, lovely guy, actually, but obsessional compulsive guy, really keep fit guy. Right. Everything he did quite extreme, Yeah. And he got quite depressed, quite a good 18 months, really. And then towards the end of it, he was getting well. So I said to him, Dave, you've done really well, mate. I want to sit. And he goes, yeah, I am. He said, but my mood this morning was only 4 out of 10. And I went, what do you mean your mood was 4 out of 10? He said, I get up every morning and I measure my mood, and I missed the trick, and I went, you shouldn't do that. And not every day. I said, because what you're doing is you could be 8 out of 10, but by the time you've explored it, you talk yourself into being a 4 out of 10. So the very act of looking at it changes it. I said, so you have to be really careful. You don't have to do that anymore. Do it fortnightly if you want, but don't do it daily.
Yeah, that's interesting too. So what I will collect daily is three things to be grateful for.
Okay, that's
5
fine.
wins, because what I found was I was picking up really well on the stuff that wasn't going well, naturally.
Yeah.
And I would never sit and contemplate the good stuff I'd done.
Yeah.
So I was like, right, well, how can I fix that? I can put more attention perhaps onto this. So just the grateful, like today, you were on my list. I'm like, how lucky am I to be able to sit in here with you for an hour and a half and learn from you?
Yeah.
That's fucking awesome. But I could easily forget that's something special. Yeah. So I have to note it down, really feel it, appreciate it, and then also I've got it back to look on as well. Yeah. So in a month, let's just say I have a day where I think life's fucking shit, and I'm like, what's the point? I can look back and go, oh, it's been all right. Yeah. It's been all right. This is just a feeling. It's going to pass.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
And I guess it's because when people have had depression, there is a link, and a lot of literature written that depression is traumatic. So trauma and depression go hand in hand for a lot of people. They're that traumatized by depression, they're that afraid of it happening again, they can't let go of it.
Oh wow.
So it's like your best friend and worst enemy, so you want to keep it by your side, because you don't want it sneaking up on you ever again. So people, it rips the self-confidence out of people in life. So they'll say, I don't really want to do that. And you go, well, why don't we want to book that holiday to Spain? No, let's just chill out. In the back of their mind, they're thinking, I don't want to take my eye off this ball here, this nasty little thing, because if it moves away and I can't see it, it's going to come back and get me. Wow. So they hold on to their depression, even in the back part, just because they don't want it to sneak up on them again.
I think that's what I was trying to explain earlier, but you've just explained it much better. Yeah. You know, that fear of moving on from the depression. Yeah. Yeah. Like, it's safer to keep it with me, even if it's a little bit of a distance. Yeah. It feels like sometimes kind of holding myself back from really experiencing and enjoying life. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a strange thing. So you'll have a glass ceiling, and your glass ceiling will be lower because you're holding on to that. What we would say is let it go. Yeah, your brain will tell you if it's coming back, because early warning signs. The brain doesn't want to get ill again and again and again.
When does self-development become harmful then? So the guys that get up every day and, like you say, do the analysis and upset, can't miss the workout. Like, at what point does that take away from the development of the self and become like a machine?
Well, I guess this is what I'm just looking at. You're the better man. I think men struggle with this. I think they struggle with balance. Yeah. If a man takes up golf, he has to have the best golf clubs and the best clothes, and he's playing off like 98, but he still has to look the part. And I guess it's all about balance. So I try and look at it as like spinning plates, and I'm really bad at spinning plates. I can spin one plate brilliantly, but you give me 6 plates and I'm thinking, what the fuck, And I think a lot of men have struggled to spin in all the plates. But what I try and do is think, okay, well, you've seen your grandson, you've been out and had a drink with your daughter, you're working pretty well, you're sleeping okay. I always keep my eye on my sleep. So I try and just look at it and go, all right, that's you're doing all right. You'll never be very good at it. You're pretty shit at it, but you're doing okay. And I think we need to check in with ourselves on that. Yeah. So if you haven't seen your friends for a month, but you're doing brilliant at work, you need to think, I'm doing brilliant at work, but I haven't seen my friends for a month. So I need to maybe let that plate slow down and start spinning this plate.
Yeah. But that's a form of analysis though, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, we're kind of saying that analysis is both healthy and can be unhealthy.
If it's behavioural, so if it's not just cognitive, you've got to have the behavioural element.
There's got to be some action linked to that. Yeah. I think that's the thing. That's the thing that is often missing. Yeah, isn't it? Think.
Yeah. How many times have I thought about going to the gym, but I've never fucking been? Type of thing. So it's attaching the behaviour is so.
At that point, are you better off just saying to yourself, "I'm not going to go to the gym"?
Yes. 100%.
Rather than saying, I should, I'm going to, knowing that you're not going to.
Yeah, because it's paralysed, it's exhausting. Yeah. It's absolutely exhausting.
Are you still doing one-to-one work at the minute, Anna?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the most common issue or problem that you see with guys now? Like, is it lack of self-worth? Is it like losing the self? Like, what's the most common thing that you see? It's
sort of burnout, really. So I'm seeing a lot of people 45 to 55, and they're working as hard as they were when they were 25. Yeah. Generally speaking, now there's no age anymore. It's just a number, which is great on the one hand. On the other hand, it means people are just working just as hard as they were. There's no expectation to slow down anymore.
Okay.
So we've seen quite a lot of people with depression in terms of burnout. They just haven't got it in them anymore, and they've I don't know whether I'm just at the age myself, but they've lost the things that make them happy. You talk about play, and Gabor Mate he's got his new book out, and I think he's absolutely spot on. We forgot how to play.
Yeah.
So we did it when we were 4.
Yeah.
But somewhere along the journey, and I think I've done this, I've forgotten how to play.
Sure.
And I was talking to a lady who got cancer recently, a client, and she'd read Gabor Mate, and she'd listened to him, and she's a very bright lady, and she said, you know, Alan, she said, because she's recovered from cancer, but she had depression afterwards, understandably, and then she said, but she's doing really well, and I said, oh, by the way, you look brilliant. She said, you know what though, she said, I was starting to go for walks in the woods and the forests and all this where she lives, and she said, and I haven't told anybody this, she said, but I started throwing myself into the mud, into these pile of leaves, and when it was like a puddle, she said, I'd just go and throw myself in this puddle, hoping nobody was looking. And I looked at it and I thought, I'm not sure you're getting that well. And we had a bit of a laugh, and then she said, but I was playing.
Yeah.
And she said, it just took me out of it all. And I think men have forgot how to play.
Yeah, absolutely. I had the best time last week. I went to Peak District, and there was this nice little waterfall. I took my swimming shorts off. I'm just going to go and jump in. And like you say, it was playful. It was adventurous. It was, I don't know if I should be in there, but I'm going to anyway. Yeah. That kind of thing. And it was really good fun. And it's so hard to stay driven and focused in life, because that's what I think. It's hard for a man to, I mean, is a man judged by his achievements nowadays and his success? Most of the time. Yeah,
I think so. I think even if you look at the your partners, you know, they talk about females, you know, go across and up. You know, when they pick their partners, they want somebody who can provide, who's successful.
Makes sense.
Because if you're going to have children and childbearing, you want somebody who can look after that child.
Sure.
So there is pressure. There is pressure on that. And then you've got the, you know, difficulty with identity and all these kind of things happening. So it's a real crossroads for men at the moment.
How do you judge your own success?
I did it through work, and it was the worst thing I did, because when I got poorly after Mum passed, I overworked, because it was the thing that was keeping me well, but it was the thing that was exhausting me as well and stopping me from processing loss. So I made a big mistake. It took my eye off the ball, really, and then I got back to my daughter, my grandson, family, really. But I won't lie and think work and family, I'm not sure. You know, because people go, oh, it's all about family. I think bollocks, you know. No, you've got to be really savagely honest with yourself. If you don't want to get ill and you want to flourish, you've got to be savagely honest with yourself. And that's why psychotherapy can be savage at times.
It's brutal at times. It's the most honest form of therapy I've ever done. Yeah. It's been the most helpful. Yeah. Probably the most challenging. I think not a week goes by that I don't think about giving up. Yeah. Or telling them that, you know, it's too much money, or that I haven't got the time. Yeah. Yeah, because it keeps going deeper and deeper and deeper. Yeah. But it runs in parallel with a more enjoyable existence now. Yeah. Yeah, I always say, let's go savage sometimes with clients. So I've got a good relationship with them. And they'll say something that's a bit bullshitty. And I get it. And we all do it. And they'll go, yeah, I'll do that, Al. But, you know, I'm really busy. And, you know, I've got kids. And I go, okay, should we go savage? And they'll go, oh, don't go savage with me. And I'll go, come on, let's go savage. That's utter bullshit. You know, and we have a bit of a laugh about it. And they'll go, yeah, you're right, you know. And I'll say, no, it's right. I bullshit myself as well. We all bullshit ourselves. It's called belief biasing, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, go savage with yourself. Yeah. I love that style, how you can take such a serious subject and you can make it, like I say, have a laugh and a joke with people about it. It's really refreshing. Yeah, and I think you project what you're doing, but bring that into it, bring humour, and let people understand going savage is quite... Did you ever watch that, the roasting they do in American? That's where it came from with me. Yeah, I thought, because I was watching it once, I think it was Jimmy Carr or something, roasted somebody. It was savage. Yeah, it is brutal. And and I thought... But Steve Peters, who wrote the Chimp Paradox book, well, it is that the chimp is savage, and he will tell you everything until he destroys you, and the human has to somehow pick themselves up and work with this 80% chimp, you know, and you have to go savage. Tony and I discussed this, and we got into a little debate over it about like what makes a good friend. Like, is it the guy that goes savage on you because he loves and cares about you, or do you have to wait for somebody to ask your opinion? So if I thought you were struggling, but you didn't ask my opinion, would a good friend push that to the side and go, "Well, I care about you anyway, so I'm going to tell you"? or would you say, but I haven't fucking asked you, Alex, so
Yeah,
put up, please.
interesting.
What would you consider a good friend? How would you want your friends to be with you?
Yeah, you said something earlier about it's all about timing.
Yeah.
You know, so I guess in that relationship with the clients, I have to, one, make sure I've got a good relationship with them. Two, make sure they're laughing with me.
Yeah.
And the timing is so important. You get the timing wrong, no matter who you are, and you're doomed.
Yeah.
So are you ready to be savaged, would be the question. If you're just going into the rabbit hole, you're not ready to be savaged.
Yeah, I get excited now. Like, even like listening to you talk about that, I love getting really honest now.
Yeah.
Because I kind of like have worked out that that's the only place where the answers really live.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? The truth is pretty important.
Yeah. It is, and it brings a lot of anger in people, and
well, we've done as men, we've done a lot of work not to get to that truth. You know, we've put a lot of walls up.
Yeah.
You know, different identities.
Yeah.
We've created something that we probably, is not us.
Yeah.
And then we have to go back and find out who we are.
Yeah.
And especially men around the age of 40, this usually happens in my experience.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you know what I mean? They've ticked a lot of boxes. They've got a job, a good job.
Yeah.
Got a wife, kids. It's like, well, what now? And like, how did I even get here? This job that I've climbed this ladder for 15 years, I don't really like it.
Yeah.
It just pays the bills.
Yeah.
There's got to be more to life than this. And people start asking new questions to themselves.
Yeah.
It's like part 2, isn't it? It's like the second half of
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
It seems like a common time for guys to start looking at themselves.
Yeah. We'll call it the third quarter phenomena, they call it.
Okay.
You'd like this, actually, doing all your walking. The third quarter phenomena comes from the Arctic expeditions.
Okay.
When the third quarter phenomena was when their heads go down. It's usually when they can't see the finishing line.
Right.
And they call it the third quarter phenomena. So I was reading about it, and they did it in the pandemic when we went into the lockdown. The winter one, everybody's head was going down, and it was a third quarter phenomenon. And I thought, where I'm in life at the moment is the third quarter, and I was thinking, what are you going to do with this one? You know, the first one you never thought about, you just had fun. The next one, you were aware what you're doing, your career and everything. And this one, what is this one about? You know.
Yeah. It's a bit like mile 18 of the marathon.
Right, that's what I thought you'd know about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like, well, the end is. It's not that far away, but it's still far enough away for me to not be able to see it.
Yes.
Yeah, I've come this far.
Yeah.
This leads me on nicely to my final 2 questions then.
Yeah.
You've just spoken about, well, what's next for you in that time of life? What is next for you? What ambitions, goals, things do you want to experience in the next 10 years of your life?
Yeah, I think, again, you've touched on it really, writing a book.
Okay. What would it be about?
It would be about, do you know Mark Manson? Yeah, it's probably one of the best.
Not
fuck it.
Giving a fuck?
Yeah.
And he's done a couple of others as well.
Yeah, he has. And when I read Don't Give a Fuck, his writing is unbelievable. So what he does is he writes science in such a fun, lovely level. It's unbelievable how you transfer the science into that. Very talented man. And now nowhere near that, but that's the kind of stuff I want to get it into. I want to get somebody to be able to read something that's really important, but in their frame of reference.
Okay.
And that's what he does amazing.
Let's Go Savage, I reckon you should call it.
Right.
That's
Actually.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it would.
How to get really honest with yourself and have a good laugh at the same time.
Yeah. No, that's good. I like that.
Yeah, I think it's so refreshing.
Yeah.
Like I say, you have got that energy about you. You've got a playful energy.
Yeah.
But you're also clearly very, very smart and know what you're talking about.
I'd like to do that because I do think if people can understand it, what we've just talked about, it will shift mental health. Yeah,
well, this is why the podcasts are so good. I never know where the conversation is going to go.
Yeah.
I can bounce off you can bounce off me, I can learn and people can learn, and I can ask questions that probably are on some guys' minds too.
Yeah.
So what else for you, like writing a book?
So the book is because I've never felt good enough. So basically my cognition is you ain't going to write a book.
Yeah.
There's no way. And even my brother, he's retired now, he did well for himself, but he said to me some 10-15 years ago, you need to write a book, Al. And I went, I know. And he went, why haven't you even started it? And my self-efficacy is really low. Even talking to you now about the little voice going, you ain't going to write a book.
Yeah.
So that's really my next sort of sitting back and just getting my head around that, really.
Brilliant.
And the rest of it, probably getting healthier. I've got myself a bit of a personal trainer, and because I'm aware at 57 I ain't going to do much if I haven't got the energy.
Yeah.
So it's not so much to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or anything. It's just more energy.
What's your experience of having a personal trainer? Because that's my background. That's what I've done for 18 years.
Oh, right. He's a young lad.
Yeah.
He's a friend of my daughter. He does a lot of bodybuilding stuff, so he's doing some competitions, and so
you'll be wearing a vest on the next podcast we do then.
Yeah, I will, mate.
Pair of short shorts and a vest.
And well, because he's my daughter's friend, he's going to go easy with me. But all I want is a bit of a kickstart. I don't need to. After that, I can probably maintain it, but I can't get kickstart. And he said something really interesting to a young lad. He said, "So why haven't you done it?" He said, "You've just said for the last 3 years you haven't looked after yourself. Why haven't you done it?" He said, "You're knowledgeable. You know all this." And I knew what he was doing, and I went. He thinks it's accountability. He said, if you don't start something, you can't fail.
Sure.
And he hit me. That did quite a sort of thing. Yeah, you might be right. And, and I'm wondering if the book's that accountability. If I don't start it, I can't fail.
Sure. And I think there's an age where guys question whether they can get into good physical shape again.
Yes.
Like, have I got it in me?
Yeah.
Like, is it worth it?
100%.
Yeah. And there's all sorts of reasons why you wouldn't start. But that's perfectly what we've just been speaking about, isn't it? There's 3 years of I should get healthy.
Yeah.
No doing off the back of it.
Yeah.
So now you're doing.
Yeah.
Stick with it. Stick with the trainer.
Cheers.
Don't
Alex.
have it short term either.
No, I've done 6 months. So the plan is 6 months. So April will be the last month.
Okay.
And then what he said is go online then with him, and he'll just keep it ticking over.
Yeah. Again, I always think of it as the same as therapy.
Yeah.
I could never have that attitude with therapy. Go, well, I'm gonna go 6 months. And then I'll be fine.
Right.
Then I'll maintain what
Because you drop off, don't you?
Of course.
Do. Yeah.
I'm not. I know myself so well.
Yeah.
Like, even if I try my best not to, this therapist keeps me. Like, he keeps digging questions out.
Yeah.
That make me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
The training's no different.
So you can go savage with your therapist when you get back.
He always goes fucking savage on me. Seriously. Yeah. I haven't worked out how he does it. We'll start the set. It's online. We'll start the session and he'll just sit there like that, waiting for me to say something. I'm like, fucking hell. He's like both annoying and brilliant at the same time. Yeah. Superb. And I get to the end of the session and he's got all this weird dark shit out of me. I'm like, how did he get that out?
Yeah.
And then, I'm like sitting there scratching my head going, how's he doing this?
Yeah.
He's brilliant.
No, it's really good.
And he's
hold
never
on to
once
him.
told me what to do. Ever.
No, hold on to him.
Yeah, he's really good.
Yeah.
But again, it was like, there was a like, is it working?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But then you'll catch yourself doing something that you wouldn't have done 6 months ago. Like the way you react to something, or if something angers you, you can separate yourself and stop. You just behave like a better person, basically.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? My whole ambition, Alan, was just become a better son first, become a better man. Because I kept setting these goals and failing them. And I was determining my worthiness on these goals. So, if I couldn't make the extra money for the business, or I couldn't do this, I was useless.
Yeah.
So I had to scrap all of that and go, well, I've got no self-discipline. I've got no basic hygiene practices. And this wasn't tearing myself down. It was just being honest.
Yeah.
So I had to go right back to the start and doing things like good showering, brushing my teeth, floss. All those things that actually said, Alex, you're important and worth taking care of.
Tiny habits, innit? Yeah.
Tiny habits. Yeah. That really were useful in the growth that I've experienced over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So it was almost like having this derelict piece of land.
Yeah.
And you go, right, we're going to build a real good foundation first.
Yeah.
And I did that for probably 2 years, just slowly. And then I was in a position where ambition could exist in my life because I had some belief in myself and some confidence and a bit of worthiness.
Yeah.
Probably the first time in my life where I'm actually like, I'm all right with myself. I don't love myself. I don't look at myself and go, oh, what a great guy you are.
Yeah.
But I'm like, you're okay now.
Yeah.
Now we've got to add on to this.
Yeah. And just keep building.
Sure.
That's all you can do.
It's nice to go to bed at night and put your head on the pillow and know that you've acted like a decent human being.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's all a journey, mate, isn't it?
It is. It is. It's fucking hard, Alan. It's tiring. Part of me is like, well, why does it have to be so hard?
Yeah.
Why do I have to try hard to be a nice person?
Yeah.
A good person? Why can't I just enjoy life and get on with it? But I've done that and it doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
I end up drinking way too much.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. So I have to check myself.
Yeah. It is.
I have to make sure I'm doing the right thing.
And I think that's where the honesty comes in about it. People go, the job you do, what you're doing, what I do. And I'd say to everybody out there, no matter what your job you do, we're all fucking vulnerable. And if you don't check in, we're all capable of going down. I've worked with psychiatrists, GPs, surgeons. These aren't idiots who have gone down that bad road. They're just people who didn't check in with themselves. And once you start that journey, you lose insight. So the deeper into the rabbit hole you go, the less insight you have.
GPs are a strange bunch.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
They're some of the unhealthiest people I know.
Yeah, they are incredible. So
it's hard for me to ever really take their advice seriously.
Yeah.
This isn't, I'm not taking anything because they save lives and they do a great job and they work so hard.
Yeah.
But what I mean is, if I'm getting health guidance from somebody who's overweight and drinking, I'm not going to listen.
Yeah.
So GPs are a strange one for me.
Yeah. There's a psychiatrist who works with the NHS helpline, and she said that in an interview. They interviewed her, and she said, when a GP comes to see me, and they'll say, yeah, I understand that I'm a GP. She went, no, you're not. You're my patient.
Right.
And we wouldn't be sitting here if you weren't my patient. You're not a GP. And she breaks them down straight away.
Well, what's understanding and knowledge? Like, what is it? Like, so the theory, does that mean you understand and know something, or do you have to experience it? So if you know what to eat and that you should be fit and active and healthy, like, let's say you know that, but you're not doing it, is that knowing and understanding? Like, or do you have to taste it and feel it to really know it?
Yeah, you've got to go behavioural, Alex. There's no, we know what to do. I don't think I've ever met a client who goes, really? Exercise is good for me? Yeah. I didn't know that, Al. I've never known a client who said that. But if I said to them, try and do a bit of activity, 10-minute walk or something, they know what to do. They just struggle to do it.
Yeah, but they really know. This is what I'm saying. Like therapy, for example. We might all sit back and go, it would probably be good for me, but I couldn't have envisioned the outcome of therapy without doing therapy. I couldn't have envisioned how good it feels to be healthy.
No, you've got to do it
without being healthy.
So that's really interesting. So as human beings, we would like this equation. I think something, I feel it, and then I do it. So I'm going to think about going to the gym, then I'm going to feel about going to the gym. Oh my God, and I'm going to go to the gym. It doesn't work. It's the opposite way around. You go to the gym, then you feel the gym, and then you think about going to the gym again. So it's the opposite way around, and we don't like that equation. We want it to be, I'm going to think about going, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, we all say in the group that, motivation comes after action.
Yes, yeah.
Not the other way around. Yeah. Don't wait for motivation,
Yeah.
otherwise you'll be sat there all day kind of thing. And then final question, because I know we've been speaking for an hour 40 now, so you're all right for time, aren't you?
Yeah.
What's the area that you're now working on in order to become a better man or a better human? Like, what's your thing that you look at and go, I'd actively like to get better in that area of my life?
Do you know what? This is interesting. Relationships.
Okay.
I know you touched.
We should bring this up now. We could be here for another 3 days.
You touched on it, and I smiled, and I thought.
Okay.
So I was with somebody for 20 years, and my mother and my daughter, and we're still friends. You know, we never fell out or anything, just drifted. So I've been on my own for about 8 years, sort of thing.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, fucking hell, you know what? Especially with watching people die, and this is selfish, but I'm thinking, I don't really want to die on my own. I'd like somebody to, bring me a cup of tea at least, and all that, and get old. And so again, it's terror management theory. The doors have opened. I've looked at the future, and I thought, I better have a relax. And then I'm sitting there thinking, but I'm shit at them. So how do you get good at something you're not good at? And I don't want to go through life hurting people. Nobody wants to do that. So do I stay on my own and rather than let it fail, or do I go back out there and relearn? And I guess on a personal level, that's the next challenge.
Is that also the fear of hurting people?
Yeah, massively.
Same, yeah. I kind of know I need to get back in the game to get better at it.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of scared that the next person I meet, I'm going to fuck them up too.
Yeah, absolutely. And as much as my ex were friends, I didn't help her. Didn't help myself, but didn't help her either. And you have to go savage with that and go, yeah, I mean, it takes two to tango, but I still have to take responsibility.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's relationships. If I was honest and said how many relationships underlying my clients' problems, a lot, really. They're hard work.
They are very hard work. I think they expose you to...
Yeah.
They certainly expose me.
Yeah.
I think I'm this great guy, and then all of a sudden I can be this jealous, monstrous... controlling dude. I'm like, well, where did he come from? I don't like him, so tell you what, we won't have a relationship and he won't show up.
100%.
So you do, there's a huge sacrifice and trade-off by not putting yourself in those positions where your ugly side is exposed, because you miss out.
It is.
You miss out. And can you really train it, do you think, if you're not in it?
It's hard. You've got to get back in it.
You've got to almost, like, to deal with jealousy, you've almost got to be jealous. Jeff always says to me, Jeff Thompson, he says, like, Alex, when you get that jealous feeling arise, say to yourself, this is the training now. This is the equivalent of you being in the squat rack. You need to be there, and you need to fight the resistance to want to rip someone's head off. Like, that's the only way. You've got to observe it, know it, and then get used to it.
It's like everything else, I guess, isn't it, really? But you've got to get back in it. And then there is a trade-off. because I like my work, I enjoy my life, and I think, well, carry on. Carry on. Are you just having a relationship because you think that's missing, or actually maybe you just don't need it? And then you have that kind of dilemma.
Maybe.
Then,
or are we just doing the extra work so that we don't have to have a relationship?
yeah. Yes.
Tell you what we'll do. We'll go out for a night out.
Yeah.
You could be my wingman.
All right,
I bet you got some good chat. You'll have some good chat.
Some good ones, but it's interesting, isn't it?
I'll be the muscle.
Okay,
you can be the brains.
Deal done.
Yeah, we'll do that between the two of us. We should do all right.
Brilliant,
mate. What a pleasure.
No, it's a pleasure to come here. Honestly, thanks for
good.
asking me.
Well, I know you're a busy man.
No, thanks for asking.
And I was super excited today. This was like my Christmas day. I was just I get to learn from someone like yourself. Tony speaks incredibly highly of you.
Cheers.
And yeah, I love what you're doing. I love your work. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so if you just put workingminds.org.uk in the internet, you'll come up, and contact details and everything. Cool. So people can send me an email or Facebook, cool. Working Minds UK, and then send us an email if they're interested. All I'd say is a summary: depression's okay. It's how deep we go into it, really. I
think that was very important that you made that. It is really important. So thank you, and looking very dapper as well.
Thank you. Yes, off to do a clinic now.
Well,
you are very smart. You're very smart. Well,
this was just for you, man.
Thank you.
I saw your picture online. I was like, this guy dresses sharp, so I'm putting on a blazer. Brilliant. So I never do that. So cool, mate. Thanks again.
It's a pleasure.
Cool. Thank you. Let's get some pictures as well.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cool, mate. Thank you.
Cheers.
What a guy.
Has that been okay?